We'll get started. I'd like to welcome everybody back to Simple Fun 360 Education Week. My name is Daniel. I'm a member of the training team here at BGL, and I'll be running today's webinar all about automating data entry with BGL SmartDocs. Before we begin, we just need to cover some housekeeping matters. Firstly, if you do have any questions during the webinar, we do have that Q&A function in Zoom. I do have some of my colleagues, including some members who have graciously given up some time from the support team to help with some questions here. So feel free to send any questions you have related to the webinar through there, and we'll get to as many as we possibly can. Given that all listeners are on listen-only mode, so if you do have any questions, that is your best avenue to get them answered. In addition to that, this webinar, along with all the other webinars in the Education Week, are being recorded, and they'll be uploaded to the BGL YouTube channel once we get around to uploading them after this whole week and Education Month is done. Speaking of Education Month and Education Week, let's have a look at the schedule. So we do have our Simple Fun 360 Education Week this week. I just need to hide this panel here. So we are on our 5th webinar for this particular week, as you can see, and we do have a large number of webinars coming up in the next couple of days. If you were interested in attending any of these webinars, please do feel free to sign up to them. I'll send a link into the Zoom chat right now, and you can click in and register for any of those webinars. And once again, if you're unable to make any of those, they'll all be uploaded to YouTube after the month is done, and you'll be able to access those at any time. In addition to that, some of our other software, such as Simple Invest and Cas 360, also have some education weeks for them as well. So if you were a user of those softwares as well, there are signups for those webinars. So Simple Invest 360, that week is happening next week, and then the week after will be Cas 360. So I highly recommend going in and signing up for those webinars if you're interested. And once again, they'll all be uploaded once the Education Month is complete. Now, I would actually be remiss to not mention our newest product, SmartDocs AI, SmartDocs 360 here, given that it is a webinar all about SmartDocs. Just a quick background about it. It is a standalone solution. It currently has integrations with Xero, and there's lots of plans to integrate with other software providers as well. It's all about managing your documents and making paper to data solutions. So you're feeding in your documents, and then you're getting usable data out of that. If you were interested, and if that did pique your interest, and hopefully it does, and this webinar does pique your interest there, I'll post a link to the SmartDocs 360 landing page as well, where you can express your interest potentially in participating in the beta. So feel free to jump on that opportunity because it's a very exciting development for us. I know the product team behind SmartDocs 360 is incredibly excited about where it can go. But without further ado, we'll get into today's webinar. Starting off, the agenda. So what we'll be covering today, that includes, firstly, uploading documents. So how do you get documents into your system? Then we'll have a look at the SmartDocs AI analysis. What that means is it will analyze the documents you send to your funds, and it will essentially categorize them and extract data based on the analysis that it provides. Some of the 3 most common ones include the bank statements, as it mentions on the screen, rental statements, and annual tax statements as well. So we'll run through examples of all of those, and I'll also explain how I would typically expect them to be used in a best practice environment. And then finally, we'll run through the distribution tax automation screen. This actually combines with the annual tax statement that we uploaded, so it'll just be a tack on at the end there to show you how to manage that document when it comes to completing your distribution tax automation at the end of the financial year. So we'll get into that right now. Firstly, we'll start off with uploading documents. I'll tab back over to the software right now here, and I'm going to select my fund to begin with. So we got DP SmartDocs right here. Uploading documents to your fund can be done in a variety of different ways. You can simply upload documents to the documents screen, and there are various different little tabs in different screens within the software that all achieve the same outcome of getting your documents into the fund. One we would like to highly suggest is the SmartDocs email, which is the one up the top here. I'll actually just zoom in to show you. Each fund that is created in Simple Fund 360 has a SmartDocs email automatically created for them. What this means is you can use this email and send documents to it, and those documents will be uploaded to your fund. So let me show you how that's done. I'm going to simply copy this by selecting the icon, jump back over to my email, and I'm going to create a new email. We could enter the subject here, for instance, entering a financial year or something about the document, but we're just going to leave it at 2024, and I'm going to attach some files. Just need to enter and find where I'm keeping these files. There we go. When it comes to uploading or sending documents through the SmartDocs email, you can do multiple at a time. So in this case, we're going to select all 3 documents we're going to manage today and click Open. Those will upload down the bottom. And once they're complete, we can simply click Send. So that's been sent off now. It does happen fairly quickly. I typically would expect documents to receive a response within about 30 seconds, maybe even less time. And once that's complete, the documents will be accessible from your fund. So hopefully that will come through very soon. Regardless, we'll wait for that email to come in, and hopefully I can show you that in just a little bit. There we go. So once the documents have been uploaded, you'll receive a confirmation for that, including which documents have been uploaded, whether they were successful or unsuccessful. And then as you can see, it says that they have been forwarded to the SmartDocs engine to process. What that means is they've been sent to the software, and currently the system is analyzing them to best categorize them into whichever model they fit. So that might be a bank statement, a rental summary, an annual tax statement, a distribution statement, or one of our other models that we have with SmartDocs AI. So I'm going to close that for now. And if we go here to the document screen, which is under Reports and then Documents, you can see that we have our 3 documents that have been uploaded to the fund. One thing to note is that because they have the SD icon on the left side, that means they have completed analysis, which means that data has been extracted and the system will present you with that data for you to confirm and make sure that's correct. Speaking of which, let's get straight into our first item, which is going to be bank statements. If I jump back over to the PowerPoint here, bank statements are very simple. As I mentioned, you can upload or send bank statements. These can be done in a PDF or a JPEG file format. It does extract bank details, as well as details about the debits and credits, as well as descriptions and dates for all transactions in that bank statement. And given that, once it's uploaded and SmartDocs analyzes the document, it is incredibly easy to export the data into new transactions in the fund. So we jump back into here. All we need to do is select our document on the document screen. That will open the screen up. I'm actually going to zoom out to give us a bit more space. We have our document here on the left side, and as you can scroll down, we have 3 pages here, 4 pages actually, relating to various different transactions. On the right side, we have some details specifically related to the document itself. But if we click on transactions up the top, then it will show us an entirely different section, which can be a bit intimidating to begin with. One thing to note, and probably the most important thing for you when it comes to SmartDocs, is this drop down here. This is where you can select the model that is analyzing the document. So if, for instance, SmartDocs did not recognize the correct model, you can select instead which model you would like to use on that particular document. So let's say this was meant to be instead a contract note, you can select that option, and then you can choose to reanalyze the document. We're not going to do that because evidently this is a bank statement, and we're going to look at what functions we can now complete that SmartDocs has analyzed it. So it has extracted various different pieces of information, such as the account name, the start date and end date of the document. We do have opening balance as well as closing balance. And as I click through these, you can see that different sections of the document on the left side are actually being highlighted. So if you ever were confused about where this information was coming from, simply select one of these fields and you'll see a box appear, as well as it will scroll on the left side for this particular document. So there's various different sections here. This is the main information, but if we wanted to get transactions out of this document, what we will need to do is select Fast Bank Entry up the top. Once we've selected that, we can select a bank that has been added to our fund. You can also select a LRBA account as well. That is possible, but we're just going to select our bank. Once that's been selected, we can click Go to Fast Bank Entry. So it will analyze the document and create transactions for us based on the details. In addition, like I mentioned before, it does extract date data, as well as data related to credit balances and debit balances. And once again, as I'm clicking through here, you can see that the document is scrolling down and shows you exactly where this data is coming from. We do have a large number of transactions, and if we were to go down through each of these transactions, you can see that the pages on the right side, it's scrolling through the different pages and showing you exactly where each piece of information lies. One very important thing when it comes to this is if there is a case where the debits and credits are incorrect, we can swap them around by selecting this button up the top to swap debits and credits. But typically in a best practice scenario, I would expect you to upload a document, then click the Fast Bank Entry. That way you get to this screen with a bunch of transactions, quickly have a review of these to ensure they're all correct. If there are some errors, there will be errors on the left side, potentially here. One of them might be a field is currently missing, as you can see here, in which case you would need to click through and enter those details. In this particular case, it's the 4th of the 7th, so I'm going to re-enter that now. And another thing to note is that you need to upload the documents before creating entries or completing the process of profit allocation and tax calculations within the fund. If you have already created entries, you would need to reverse those entries before actually entering all of these new details. So if we're happy with this particular document here, we'll click Create. And that will create our bank account here, bank transactions. What does this actually look like in the fund? We've created a number of transactions, and if we head to the transaction list, we do have a number of these transactions, which are all posting to the bank account, and the other side is to the bank data clearing account. I'm not going to get into too much detail about how to use the smart matching screen itself, but the expected process would be to work through this screen and match these transactions to the correct other side. For instance, this particular transaction is a deposit for a dividend received from Commonwealth Bank of Australia, and it is predicting that is going to the dividends received account. If this was correct, you can simply click match. And what that will do, if we jump back to the transaction list and have a look at some of the matched items, it will fill out the other side of that transaction, now posting to the dividends received account. So that's the general process I would expect for uploading bank statements. You bring the bank statement into the document screen, click in, click that fast data entry option, then create the transactions and match them to the correct account. So there are a number of other transactions which I'm not going to cover today, but we'll move on hopefully to the rental statements. I will need to actually reverse the financial year just because the rental statement is one for the 2022 financial year. And we'll jump back to our document screen. So, rental statements, the second model we're going to be covering today. Rental statements, the ones that can be managed by SmartDocs include your monthly or yearly rental summaries, as well as rental statements with multiple properties. What the rental statements attempt to do is extract the income and expense data that is displayed on the rental summaries, and will attempt to reconcile the figures in Simple Fund 360 to match that. Essentially, it is a validation to be completed at the end of a month or a year to bring the figures of income and expense to what is shown on the report. And I'll show you exactly what I mean by that now. So rental financial summary, this is the one we are looking at. I'll click into it now. As you can see, it is a simple document here that includes some details about rent, plumbing, advertising, and various other fees. If we go to our transactions section, like we have with the bank statement, it's going to show us the rental summary model, which we can also change any of those if necessary. But once we scroll down, here is the real heart of the rental statement model. We have the option, firstly, to select the correct property that this rental statement applies to. So if you had multiple properties, it would be necessary for you to select this and select the correct property there. Scrolling down, we do see that SmartDocs AI has analyzed these particular lines in the document and has determined that, for instance, this $220 should be going to the advertising account, which is 41920. That are property expenses, advertising there. So it has predicted where each of these income and expense values should end up within the software. But down the bottom, it does show that it needs an adjustment. That's because we do need the other side of a transaction in order to post this final adjustment. One way that you can use this is simply not recording any of the income and expense transactions for properties, uploading a monthly rental statement, and then simply adding another row down the bottom here. So we click Add Row, scroll to the bottom, and we can select to add a new bank row. You can use any of these other accounts as well in order to add additional lines, but we're going to select a bank. We're going to click this box here and select our bank account, which is 60400, and we'll click Confirm there to make sure that bank account is selected. And what we'll do is we'll post the adjusting amount to this account. So this is going to be a negative 20053.5. So it is fairly confusing, but please do bear with me here. I will show you the transaction right after, and hopefully then it will make more sense to you. But we are currently making adjustments to bring the property income to a value of 22,000. We're bringing the agent management fees to 1,600, advertising to 220, repairs and maintenance to 676, and then the remainder is being posted to the bank to balance that transaction. So if we're happy with that, we'll click Post Adjustment Journal. And we can click View Transaction as well. So here is the transaction. I'll actually just cancel out because I believe it's better to see it from a bird's eye view. And as you can see, we have a credit being posted here to rental income. And we have our expenses that are currently being posted, as well as the debit, the other side of that transaction being posted to the bank. Essentially, what this has done, it has recorded your income as well as your expense values, and then has posted the remainder to the bank. So that is one way that you can use rental statements, is to essentially upload that document and then simply post all of your income and expenses that appear on that document. In addition to that, the rental statement is also attached to that document. One thing that might actually happen is that the income and expense values don't actually match up. So for instance, these expenses, I might just change around some of the values just to make it a bit different and give you an example of doing reconciliation at the end of the year. Just delete that and copy this. So the other use case we have for our rental statements is to use it as a reconciliation tool, which will essentially bring all of your income and expense balances to the balances you see on the rental statement, reconciling those figures at the end of the year and ensuring you're not missing any of those. What we do in order to achieve that is we'll head to Reports and then head back to our Documents screen. We'll click into the rental statements here, go back to our transactions section, and you can actually see that there is an attached transaction. That's because this document is attached to that other transaction, but we're going to leave that for now. As you can see up here, SmartDocs has calculated that a certain number of adjustments need to be made to our expense accounts. That's because the ledger amount, the amount that we have in that transaction, is shown here, $200, $10, and $4. And if you click this drop down, you can actually see the date of that transaction and view those transactions as well. But what SmartDocs is attempting to do is bring these values, so for instance, this $200, and then bring it to the total value that is appearing in the statement. So that is the 1,130 plus the $520. So that's $1,650. In this particular case, what we would expect is that you need to bring all of your income and expenses to these values, and there needs to be another side of the journal. What I have typically found is that either this is posted to the bank account, or it might be posted to sundry debtors or sundry creditors instead, whether that is an asset or whether that is a liability. So in this particular case, we'll select sundry creditors for this particular one. Sundry creditors has been selected there, and we'll enter the adjustment amount, which is just simply that adjustment value down the bottom. So the goal of using this tool is to bring that adjustment amount to 0, and that will mean that all of your income and expenses matches what shows on your statement. Once we've completed that process, we can click Post, and we can click to view the transaction once again. And you can see this particular transaction, it is increasing the expenses to the property here in the agent management fees, advertising, and repairs and maintenance accounts, with the remainder being posted to sundry creditors. And this is typically what I would expect to see in an adjustment journal at the end of the financial year, meaning that you are reconciling the income and expense accounts to match any of the yearly rental statements that you may be uploading. In terms of this, I do see some questions talking about how to process monthly rent received to that bank account. In this particular instance, if you were to upload monthly rental statements that do work with the SmartDocs AI, then you could actually process the monthly rent in a similar fashion. What I mean by that is this other transaction we do have does have the 22,600 in rent here. And I do encourage you to upload the documents, and you can always upload them and see what SmartDocs and how SmartDocs analyzes those documents. If it's done in a similar way, you should be able to simply have the rental income there, select the second line as the bank account, and post that as a transaction, which then will also automatically attach the document to that transaction. Finally, to finish off now that we've covered the rental statements, is going to be our annual tax statements. So our dividends and distribution statements are also covered by SmartDocs. What it does is it extracts the payment date and security code data, and it recognizes the tax component data that is held on the document. This is very useful for our annual tax statements because it allows us to use that in the distribution tax automation screen to make the process of inputting tax details for distributions significantly easier. Let me show you what I mean by that. So we'll jump back over to the software and to documents. The last statement we have here is the NDQ tax statement. If we were to click into that one, as you can see, we have our document here on the left side. Right side, we have some details to it. And if we go to our transactions section, you can see we have some details relating to the document. However, there is this one section here that it says to review and extract data from this statement in the distribution tax automation screen. So extracting the data from this document does not occur in this particular transaction screen, but it happens on the distribution tax automation screen. So I'll do that right now. I do actually need to change the financial year back again, just to make sure we're in the correct financial year. Just for demonstration purposes. So we'll go to compliance, and we're selecting distribution tax automation. And as you can see, we have this NDQ document here. In order to access our SmartDocs analyzed documents, that is the SD review icon up the top. If we were to select this particular one, it's saying there is no documents found, but as you see, we did have documents, so hopefully I'll be able to solve that. I believe we went too far in the financial years. I apologize for this. There we go. So if we select SD Review, you can see we have our analyzed annual tax statement showing here. What you will need to do is make sure that the correct security is applied to this particular document. All you need to do is locate the document, go to the code section, search by the code, and then select the relevant security code for that document. You can also ensure the correct financial year is selected when selecting those documents. We'll click Save. And now that document has been uploaded and connected to that security. And you know that happened because there is the SD icon directly next to this particular document. I'll actually just remove it to show you what it looks like without it. As you can see, there's no SD icon there, but if we select it, the SmartDocs icon does appear. So how do you get that tax data out of the document? It's very simple. Select the security that it's attached to, select the SD icon to extract from PDF. From there, it will extract the document, the tax data, out of that document here. For instance, this gross interest of 4 cents. If you click that in the document, it will actually display the 4 cents down here, which you can match it up with. And the idea is that you scroll down, ensure all of these details are correct in the annual tax statement. So 6438, 6438, and scrolling down further, you can analyze the rest of the document as well. But you can see that it has extracted the tax data on the right side. We have our capital gains here, and we have our foreign income as well being recorded at the bottom here. So what we'd recommend is when it comes to the end of the financial year, you get all the annual tax statements from your clients, you upload them to the software, then all you need to do is go to the SmartDocs screen, SD Review, and simply allocate the codes to each of those individual annual tax statements, which then will extract the data, and you can select the particular security, extract from PDF, and that will extract all of the tax data for you that you can then adjust if needed. In this particular case, we're going to say that that is correct, and we can select Generate Tax Data. You can also post an accrual at the same time. So if there is an amount that is variable between the payment received and the tax data there, then you can post an accrual if necessary. And once that's completed, you can see our net cash distribution now does match up with the payment received, and this particular security has been moved to the Reviewed tab. So that is the SmartDocs icon as well. I don't want to get this confused with the system-generated tax data. If we bring this back to this particular screen, we do have our system-generated tax data, which is also available, and that's based on data taken from the ASX. So if you did want to go with the automated tax data, that is an option, but we also felt it was very important to give users an option to upload their own annual tax statements and directly extract the data from there. But that is the general process to analyzing annual tax statements for you and what we would expect. And that does bring us to the end of the content for today's webinar. Hopefully, you did get some more benefits out of it, understand SmartDocs a little bit more. I understand it is a fairly quick and brief webinar. We do have another webinar on our YouTube channel that we completed recently, fairly recently, which fleshes out a little bit of SmartDocs features as well as describes the document screen and has a brief look into the SmartDocs 360 product itself. So if you're interested in that, you can go check out BGL's YouTube channel for that one there. However, that does bring us to the end of today's webinar. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming along today. If you are joining me for one of the other Education Week webinars, I hope to see you there. And in the meantime, well, I'll leave the session open for a little bit and try to get to as many of these questions. As I can see, you have all been asking many questions. So thank you very much for that. And hopefully we can get through all of these. We do have a question here. If bank feeds are connected and the deposit for rental income has been recorded, what do we need to do to undo the allocations? And what do we do first? Do documents or the allocation of the single deposit? In this particular case, what I believe you're mentioning is that you might have a bank feed active, which is completely fine. You can use bank feeds along with the SmartDocs applications as well. And there has been a deposit that has come through for rental income. The SmartDocs analysis does actually account for this, and I'll actually show you that right now. So I'll go back to those rental transaction documents. And I'm actually going to delete any of the existing transactions we have related to the property. And I'll create a new one just on the beginning of the financial year. And I'm going to select the income account. So we'll select the income account. This is what I would assume the question is asking. I do apologize if it is not. But let's say the bank feed has recorded $10,000 worth of income coming through the bank feed. So the other side is posted to the bank. How does this affect the rental statement that is being recorded? So we have this 10,000. If we jump back to our report screen and head to documents, and we can select our rental statement here, where it will go through the analysis again. It is saying there's some transactions. I might need to talk to the product team about that, as it is mentioning that, but it shouldn't have transactions. But the one thing to notice is the ledger amount showing here. So if you did have a bank feed occurring and you did upload one of these rental statements, then SmartDocs will recognize those bank transactions, those bank feed transactions that are being brought in. And it's not going to essentially duplicate the income. It will notice that there is 10,000 of property income being recorded, and it will say the correct amount, according to this statement, is 22,600. I am going to increase that value by 12,600 so that it matches the statement. Given that, there is the other side, I believe you were mentioning, where bank feeds happen after you actually go through this process, and that's where I'd recommend to do the rental statements last. So when it comes to that, let the bank feed transactions come through first, and then once all of those transactions have been uploaded for a certain period, you can upload the rental statement at the end of that period and ensure that all of those transactions within that period match up to your rental statement. The way I see it is it's an extra fail-safe to ensure that all the transactions are input into the fund and the balances are correct by the end of that period. And you would encounter some issues if you were to, for instance, post this adjustment. If I select a bank account here, select that one. It's going to show you the value, but I'll take that 10,000. I'll post that. So if we were to post that journal, and then as an example, another transaction comes in after that date. So we'll say 1st of the 1st, or we'll do 30th of the 6th, actually. For the income and the bank account, let's say another $10,000 was coming in via the bank feed. So you have your, I believe in the correct one. Oh, there it is. So you have your initial 10,000 through the bank feed. You have the SmartDocs created transaction to reconcile those values, and then you have another transaction coming through the bank feed. What you'll notice is if we go back to the rental summary, rental statement here, and click into it, it's going to recognize that the balance held in Simple Fund 360, this 32,600, is different to the statement. And now it's asking you to reconcile that downwards so that it matches the statement value. So that's why I think it's very important if you are using other automated sources of to bring transactions into the fund, is to let those processes complete and bring in the full data that is available for a period, and then use the rental statements as a reconciling tool at the end of that period. This brings us to the end of today's webinar. thank you very much. Do appreciate the questions coming through. Thank you everyone to helping answer the questions. I know there was a lot. If you did have any further questions, do feel free to contact us. Once again, via one of those support options there. Otherwise, hopefully, I hope to see you at another one of our webinars during the week. Thanks very much, everyone, and hope you have a great day.